Hello students, today we are looking at approximation. Approximation is a number, amount, cost or cost that is not exact but is almost exact. That means a number that is close to the real value. That is approximation. Now, how do we approximate? That is when we try to rounding off numbers. Before we move on, it's good for you to note anytime you have to round off. Now, the number you have to round off, you look at the number before it. If the number before is from 5 and above, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, those numbers, before you round it off, you add 1 to the number before it. But if the number is less than 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, that means the number can be cut off. And you should also note that anytime you have to round off, if you are having decimal, that means the numbers should be cut off. But if it is you are dealing with whole numbers, those numbers you have to round off will turn to what? 0. Now follow me as I'm doing this. Now you are told to round off 60.89. You want to do it to the nearest whole number. To do this to the nearest whole number, you realize that if you look at this 60.89, the number after the decimal, we don't need it. Those one are decimal. But the number before the decimal is whole number. Those are the numbers we really need them. If you look at this, now this is what unit and this is tens. You have tens and units. Now you want to round it up to the nearest whole number. You realize that this 0, after this 0, then the next number here is 8. This number is more than 5. If you are having decimal, you cut the number off. So before you cut it off, since you are having what? 8 here. Before you cut this 8 off, you add 1 to this 0. So 0 plus 1 will give us 1. So that means to the nearest whole number, you'll be having 61. You'll be having 61. Now, the next number we having, if you are to do it to the nearest tens, you want to round it up to the nearest tens. To the nearest tens. Now, if you look at this, 6 is under the tens. Now, if 6 is under tens, now it means that the next number after 6 is 0. The number is what? It's not up to 5. So if you are having 0, so if since we are dealing with whole number, the other number will turn to 0. Already this is 0. So to the nearest 10, this 60 will be what? 60. So you are having 60. Now the next thing, we want to do it to the nearest 100. We want to write it to the nearest 100. To write it to the nearest 100, now if I put h here, if this is h, you realize that under 100 here, there is no number. So that means the number under this 100 is 0. But after this 100, you realize that the next number is 6. This is a number that is more than 5. Before you turn these other numbers to 0, you will add 1 to the number that is assumed to be here, which is 0. So if you add 0 plus 1 will give us 1. So you now turn the others to 0. So that means you now have what? 100. So 60 to the nearest 100 will give you 100. Let's have another number. Now we are having what? 102.25. 112 plus 25. So again, you are told to do it to the nearest whole number, nearest tens, and nearest 100. Now again, this is the whole number. So that means you are having this is units. You are having this to be tens, and this should be 100. So under the unit, that is where after this unit we are having what? The decimal. So the number after it is what? 2. That before, if you are to round up, So decimals you be cut off, but before you cut this decimal off, you will check the next number after this 2 is 2. So you realize that this is not up to 5. So because of that, you can easily cut it off. So that means into the nearest whole number, you will be having 112. 112. Now you have to do this again to the nearest tens. To the nearest tens. To do it to the nearest tens. Now look at this. Under tens you have 1 here. So after this tens, the next number after this one is what? 2. This number is not up to 5. So we say if you are having whole number, the other numbers will be turning to what? It will turn to 0. So now since this number is not up to 5, so that means you now have what? 110. So this 0 will turn to, this 2 will turn to 0. So this is to the nearest tens, 110. If you are to do it to the nearest 100, now what do we have under 100? We have 1. We have 1 under 100. After this one, what do we have? 1. This is not up to 5. So this is not up to 5. Because of that, the other number after 100 will now turn to 0. You cut off the decimal. So that means this one will not be what? That this one will now be what? 100 to the nearest 100. So you must take note whenever you are to rounding up. So if you are having decimals, so the numbers should be cut off. Before you cut it off, you check if the number is up to 5. If they are having 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, before you cut them off, you add 1 to the number before it. But if it is number that is less than 5, that is 1, 2, 3, and 4, that means they will just be cut off. But if you are dealing with whole number, those numbers will turn to zeros. Now let's do this other example. 5,258.5. 5,258.5. So again, so I'm going to number it. So this is my unit, tens, hundred, and thousand. So that means this thousand, hundred, tens, and unit. So these ones are for what? The decimal. If I'm to do this to the nearest whole number, I want to write this to the nearest whole number. To write it to the nearest whole number, it means that after this 8, the next number I'm having is 4. 4 is not up to 5. So since I'm having decimal, I'm going to cut it off. So that means I'm having what? To the nearest whole number, I'm having 5,258. 5,258. Now, if I want to do it to the nearest tens, then under tens I'm having what? 5. The next number after this tens is what? 8. And 8 is more than 5. So if you are dealing with whole number, you turn it to 0. Before I turn this 8 to 0, I will now add 1 to this 5. So that means I will be having 5,260. Then you cut off the decimal. So I'm having 5,260. So to the nearest tens. Also, if I want to do this to the nearest 100, to the nearest 100, look at this. I'm having 2 under 100. The next number after 2 is 5. So since it is the number is up to 5, before I turn this other number to 0, I'm going to what? Add 1 to this to making it 3. So for the other ones, so I add 1 to the making it 3. For these other ones, I'll put what? 0, 0. So that means my answer to the nearest 100, it will be what? 5,300. 5,300. Now let's learn how to round off decimals. Round off decimal. Now let's look at this number. We round off 44.819 to 1 decimal place. Whenever you are to round up to decimal, so look at this. After this decimal, you are having 8. That means you count 1. So the first number, we want to do it to 1 decimal place. This is the first number. After the first number, you have what? 1. that number is not up to 5. Because it's not up to 5, if you are dealing with decimal, you will just cut it off. So that means you now have 44.8. 44.8. This is second example. Round off 8.41762 to 3 decimal places. Round off 8.41762 to 3 decimal places. So to round this up to 3 decimal places, this is the decimal. After the decimal, you count 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3. So after the third number, the next number is 6. It's more than 5. So before you cut it off, you add 1 to this 7, so making it 8. So that means you'll be having 8.418. 8.418. Now let's do the third example. Round off 3.1237 to 2 decimal places. Round off 3.1237 to 2 decimal places. So to round this up, you are having to 2 decimal places. So that means after the decimal, you count 1, 2. After the second number, before you cut the remaining of, you realize the next number is 3. It's not up to 5. Since it's not up to 5, you cut it off. So that means your answer will be what? 3.12. 3.12. Now let's move on to rounding off significant figures. Rounding off significant figures. For significant figures, you need to check if significant figures can start from whole numbers or decimal. But the number it will start from will be between the number of 1 and 9. So if you are having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so you can start counting. If the figure is that, you can start counting from there. So that means you can be from the whole number or the decimal. Wherever you see that you are having a figure between 1 and 9. Now let's look at this. This question says, round off the following to 1, 2, and 3 significant figures. So if I want to round this off to 1 significant figure, so since the first number here is 4, so I'll start counting from here to 1 significant figure. This is 4. Now I said anytime you have to round off whole numbers, so the other numbers you are removing will be what? Turned to 0. But if it is before you turn them to 0, you check if the number is what? More than what? 5. Up to 5. If it's up to 5, you add 1 to the number before it. But if it's not up to 5, you just turn it to 0. So now this is the first one to 1 significant figure. So this 43.92 to 1 significant figure. So if you count this 1, the next number is 3. It's not up to 5. So you now write off 40. That 3 will turn to 0. So this is done to 1 significant figure. 1 significant figure. Now if you are to do this to 2 significant figures, you count again 1, 2. So the next number is what? 9. So now, and you realize that you said the whole numbers will be what? Turn to 0, but decimals will be cut off. So before you cut this 9, this 9 is after a decimal. Before you cut it off, you add 1 to this 3. So that means your answer will be what? 44. That means 43.92 to 2 significant figure will be what? 44. If you are to do this to 3 significant figures, so you count 1, 2, 3. The next number is what? 2. It's not up to 5. So since it's the decimal number, you just cut it up. So that means to 3 significant figures, you are having 43.9 to 3 significant figures. Now let's move on. So now if you want to do 0.05225 to 1 significant figure, I told you earlier that anytime you are counting significant figures, You can count from whole numbers or decimal, but the point, the first number should be between the number from 1 to 9. So 0 is not accepted. So you cannot start counting from this 0, neither will you start counting from this 0, because they are not. So you start counting from this 5. So this is the first one to one significant figure. So this, if you count this first one, then the next number is 2. It's not up to 5. So since you are dealing with decimals, so you just call the number up. So that means you'll be having 0.05. So this will be to one significant figure. Now if you are to do this in two significant figures, so you count 1, 2. The next number is 2. It's not up to 5. So that means 0.05225 to two significant figure will now give you 0.052. This is two significant figures. Then if you are to write this in three significant figures, so you start counting 1, 2, 3. So then the next number is 5. So after since before you cut it off, you add 1 to that 2 to make it 3. So you now have 0.0523. This is to three significant figures. So you need to get the clarification now. Whenever you are to do round off to significant figures, it can start from whole number or it can start from decimal. But the main thing is that the first number you are counting from will be from number 1 to 9. 0 is not inclusive. So anytime you have to round off decimals, so before you need to cut the decimals off totally. But before you cut it off, you check if the number is up to 5. If it's up to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that means before you cut it off, you add 1 to the number before you. But if it is not up to that, 1, 2, 3, 4, you just cut it off. So but if you are to round off whole numbers, you turn the numbers towards 0. Before you turn them to 0, check if the number, if the required tens unit is up to 5, then you add 1 to it. But if it's not up to 5, you turn it to 0. Now for the work practice. Now number 1, round off 610.475 to the nearest whole number. Number 2, round off 56,345 to the nearest thousand. Number 3, round off 1.3838 to 3 decimal places. Number 4, round off 18.1818 to 2 significant figures. Number 5, round off 0.09099 to 2 significant figures. Please make sure you like, subscribe and comment on this video. Thank you.